Have you ever read something in the Bible that made you stop, reread, and whisper to yourself, "Wait, did I read that right?" What if I told you there's a passage buried in the Psalms that speaks of God standing among other gods? Yes, other gods, not idols, not metaphors, but divine beings, summoned before the God of all creation, standing in judgment. Psalm 82 isn't just a song, it's a courtroom scene in heaven. It's where God calls out corruption, not on earth, but among the gods themselves. What are these beings? Are they angels? Demons? Are they ancient rulers? Celestial kings? Are we somehow connected to them? And why is God angry? This psalm doesn't just invite us to read, it dares us to understand. And once you do, you'll never see spiritual warfare the same way again. So get comfortable, because we're going deep into the unseen world, into the divine council, into God's own throne room. And what he says there will shake your soul. But first, if you love diving into hidden, mysterious, and deeply spiritual corners of the Bible, then you're in the right place. This is Bible Mysteries, where we don't just read scripture, we uncover it. Let's be honest, most people have never heard a sermon on Psalm 82. It's not one of the go-to psalms people quote when they need comfort or encouragement. But this short 8-verse chapter might be one of the most controversial and revealing passages in the entire Bible. Let's read it together. Slowly, carefully. God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. Psalm 82:1 ESV. Let's pause right there. God, in the divine council. What does that even mean? This isn't metaphor. The Hebrew word used for God here is Elohim, and interestingly, the same word is used for gods in the second half of the verse. Elohim has taken his place in the council of El. In the midst of the Elohim, he holds judgment. Wait, Elohim standing in the midst of Elohim? This is not polytheism. The Bible doesn't teach multiple ultimate gods. But what it does describe here is something bigger than we usually imagine. God, the Most High, is not alone in the spiritual world. He rules over a heavenly court, a divine assembly of other spiritual beings. Think about that. God doesn't need counselors, he doesn't need help, but he chooses to govern the cosmos with a divine administration. This concept appears other places too. In Job 1, Satan walks among the sons of God who present themselves before the Lord. In 1 Kings 22, the prophet Micaiah sees a vision of God on his throne, surrounded by spirits deliberating over Ahab's fate. In Daniel 7, the Ancient of Days is seated, with thousands upon thousands ministering before him. So what is Psalm 82 showing us? It's the day the King of Heaven calls a meeting. And it's not just any meeting, it's a trial, a judgment. God is holding court, and the gods are in trouble. We have to ask, who are these gods? What did they do? And what is God about to say to them? Stick with me, because what comes next is where everything shifts. Let's revisit that first verse again. God stands in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. So let's ask the big question directly. Who are these gods? Now first, let's be crystal clear. These are not idols. They're not statues made by human hands. And they're definitely not imaginary. The Hebrew word used for gods is Elohim. And here's where it gets interesting. Elohim doesn't mean God like we think it does. In our modern language, God, capital G, usually refers to one all-powerful, all-knowing creator. But in ancient Hebrew, Elohim was a category title, not a name. It referred to any being that lived in the spiritual realm. So that includes Yahweh, the Most High God, the Elohim of Elohim, angels, spirits of the dead, demons, and yes, members of the divine council. So when Psalm 82 says God is standing among the gods, it means he's standing among other spiritual beings, those he appointed to roles of governance, judgment, and watchfulness over the nations. This might sound strange, but the Bible hints at it in several places. Deuteronomy 32. The nations were divided among the gods. Look at this powerful verse. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, He fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. Deuteronomy 32:8, ESV. This refers to the Tower of Babel moment, when humanity tried to unite and build a name for themselves, and God scattered them across the earth. But here's the twist. When he scattered them, he assigned divine beings to oversee the newly formed nations. It's like God said, "Fine, if you won't worship me, then I'll put you under the rule of lesser beings. But I will reserve one nation for myself, Israel." And so the nations were divided, each under a spiritual authority, members of the divine council. They were supposed to watch, guide, protect, and report back to God. But they didn't. Instead, they rebelled. They twisted justice. They craved worship. They influenced kings. They set themselves up as false gods. This isn't myth. It's cosmic rebellion. And that rebellion is exactly what brings us back to Psalm 82. Because now, the judge has had enough. The gavel is coming down. Let's go straight to the core of Psalm 82. Here's what God says to these Elohim, the spiritual rulers, the ones he placed in authority, the ones who failed. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Psalm 82:2. Whoa, God is angry, and not at humans, not here. He's angry at divine beings. Why? Because they've twisted justice. Think about that. God assigned these beings to govern the nations, to watch over the helpless, to defend truth, and instead, they chose to favor the wicked. Can you feel the weight of that question? How long will you judge unjustly? It's like God has been watching, waiting, patiently, but now he speaks, and his voice cuts like thunder. This isn't a casual reprimand. It's the holy fire of a righteous judge burning with disappointment, and he doesn't stop there. Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. Psalm 82:3-4. Do you see his heart? God's not just concerned with divine failure. He's defending the broken. He's saying, you were supposed to protect the weak. You were supposed to stop evil, not enable it. You were supposed to reflect me, and you didn't. That hits hard, doesn't it? And here's the deeper truth. This isn't just a supernatural reprimand. It's a reminder that God has always cared about justice. Even from the highest realms, his heart has always bent toward the orphan, the widow, the outcast. So when his appointed rulers, spiritual or human, turn their backs on the vulnerable, he calls them out. Now we come to the breaking point, the divine verdict. They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. Psalm 82:5. This is chilling. God is saying they're blind, they're foolish. They've corrupted the system so badly that the very foundations of the world are trembling. Do you feel that? When spiritual rulers fail, it doesn't just affect the heavens, it affects earth itself. Corrupt leadership, spiritual or political, always sends shockwaves into the lives of the innocent. But then comes the line that changes everything. I said, you are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men you shall die, and fall like any prince. Psalm 82:6-7. Let's pause, this is huge. God reminds them, yes, you are Elohim. You were made sons of the Most High. I gave you power, I gave you a throne. But now, you will die like mortals. You will fall like any earthly ruler. This is cosmic demotion. It's like he's saying, you thought you were untouchable, but now you'll be stripped of your glory. You'll fall, just like those you oppressed. This is not just divine judgment, it's a prophecy. These rebellious spiritual rulers, once part of God's heavenly staff, are being cast down. And many scholars believe this ties into future judgment, where rebellious powers and principalities will be cast out forever. Let's go back one last time to Psalm 82. We've walked through the mysterious opening scene, God standing in the midst of other gods. We've learned who those gods are, spiritual beings, part of his divine counsel, once entrusted with the nations. We've heard the trial, his holy fury as he rebukes their injustice, and we've witnessed the verdict. You were gods, but now you'll fall like mortals. But now, and the psalm ends with a cry, a desperate, bold, beautiful cry. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. Psalm 82:8. Let those words sink in. Arise, O God. It's a plea for God to take back the nations, to reclaim what was once handed over to corrupted powers. It's the cry of the broken, of the oppressed, of the ones longing for justice that lasts. And it's more than poetry, it's prophecy. Because hundreds of years after this psalm was written, something happened. God did rise, God did come, but not as fire, not with armies. He came as a man, a carpenter, a teacher, a sacrifice. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. John 1:14. And when Jesus walked the earth, he didn't just heal bodies, he didn't just forgive sins. He began to confront the very spiritual forces Psalm 82 talked about. Every time he cast out a demon, every time he rebuked a principality, every time he said, "The kingdom of God is at hand," he was taking back what was stolen. He was reclaiming the nations. And then he died on a Roman cross. It looked like defeat. But 3 days later, God rose. The cry of Psalm 82, "Arise, O God," where it was answered at the resurrection. Jesus stepped out of the tomb with all authority in heaven and on earth. And what did he say? "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations." Matthew 28:19. There it is again, the nations. Psalm 82 ends with a cry, "God, the nations have fallen into darkness. Rise and reclaim them." And Jesus says, "I have. Now go, bring them home." This isn't just theology. This is reality. Right now we live between two worlds. The fallout of the divine rebellion and the reign of the risen king, the corrupt powers, they're still active. We see it in war, injustice, cruelty, greed, oppression, but we also see something else rising, the kingdom. Every time you forgive instead of hate, every time you love the least and lift up the broken, every time you pray, proclaim truth and live like Jesus, you are joining heaven's rebellion against darkness. You're part of the answer to Psalm 82. Because the final words of the psalm aren't about the gods. They're about God. Arise, O God. And he did, and he is, and he will. If this opened your eyes even a little, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next mystery.